Jim Iuorio, you know him, love him. He's in charge of the Future's Edge podcast and a regular contributor to the show. Mr. Iuorio, how are you?
Good. I was wondering how you were going to pivot to me and
Well,
talk about like financial stuff from this conversation. Frankly, I'd rather go with your conversation. I think it's pretty much
all
pretty
right.
much
Two,
more
then I
fun.
have two things. What's some advice for Justin and his soon-to-be wife, and then what's the financial advice you have for both of them?
Okay, for Justin, the advice is this: never win an argument.
Yes.
Never try to win. There's no winning in marriage, and people will tell you. Tell them what you really feel. No, never tell them what you really feel. Particularly if what you really feel is crazy. And that's what's in my head a lot of times. I've had great success by keeping my mouth shut and losing arguments. Does that make sense?
That completely makes sense. And I didn't do that the first time around, but the second time around, yeah, you just need to not say everything. And it goes both ways. So how long have you been married?
Me, 33 years.
Ah, see, and is that the secret? Just to not
Oh,
win every
yeah.
argument?
Shut your yap. Exactly the secret.
Yeah.
Don't think everything needs to be resolved.
Make sure she has a she shed. Get out to the garage every now and then. Go out and have a smoke, even if you don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I believe
Start
that, you
smoking.
still need to have your own time and your own hobbies. All right, so what financial advice would you have? Should they commingle funds?
Of course, I think so. I think once if you made the decision to get married, I think that when people don't commingle funds, I have plenty of friends who don't, and plenty of very, very wealthy friends who sign prenups and things like that, and that's fine. But I think that it always, in the back of your head, is this question. I think you're either 100% in or you're 100% out. If you're not 100% in, then don't get married, is my opinion on that. Find my wife, who was a lawyer and a tax lawyer, might have different opinions about that based on some of her clients. But, I'm Italian. If you're going to take me for my money, whatever.
But do you have a secret squirrel account on the side for things that she doesn't know about?
Okay, so I don't know if I can talk about this on the air, but remember, I was in the financial business and trading floors in the 90s and the aughts, and there was a lot of stuff that was going on. You've seen the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, right?
Oh, yeah.
They were like secondarily as crazy to us in Chicago. So I will not speak anything on air, but maybe someday I'll write a book when the statute of limitations is all gone down.
Everybody needs a little. You know what? You need a little wham, a little walking around money in a can somewhere. And now, what about credit?
Ray, I'll tell you this.
Okay.
For 10 years, I never went to a cash station, and my wife never said one word about it. So people believe what they want to believe. I'd pull out a roll of hundreds, and she would just not bat an eye. And she's very straight-laced, which I think is very, very funny. People's psychology.
Wow.
I used to be able to pull out a roll of hundreds too, but that's when I was working FM.
Now, what were you going to ask him about credit?
No, I was just. What about? Okay, so people, and I know that you're supposed to be involved. You're supposed to be together. Every inch of the person. Their deep dark secrets. But a lot of people don't look into that person's credit, and that has a bearing going forward, doesn't it?
Oh, it certainly does. And I know particularly some men who I'd worked with, and again, I'm not saying it's just one way gender-wise, and found out after they got married about credit card debt that was, a mile high, and student loan debt that was a mile high, and people just never mentioned it. So yeah, I think that so many fights within marriages start with finances. So that's the one thing you do want to talk about. If a bill comes in the mail, ask what that bill is. Oh gosh, I just had a flashback to a memory of that about 2 weeks after we got married. But anyway.
Oh no, do
right
tell.
along.
What happened?
Well, no, I didn't. So, Margaret, you met my wife, Margaret.
Yes.
So, God, she's going to kill me, but she's from the North Shore. I'm from Palatine. I grew up 11 people in one home. We were like from an Italian ghetto. I just didn't assume there was any sort of student loan debt. I'm sorry, Margaret, if you're listening. But, we're like 2 weeks back from the honeymoon. Look at this. Oh, it's my student loans. Like, student what? I don't have student loans. I work 40 hours a week in college. But that happened. And that was one of the first things I should have asked her before. And not that it would have made a lick of difference, but let's just move right along.
Well, no, I have a friend who, when they got married, he realized she's $127,000 in debt in student loans because she was an attorney, and
That's
she's
crazy.
working for the Cook County State's Attorney's Office as an assistant. And he said, "What do I do?" I'm like, "Well, you two have to figure it out. I mean, is she going to pay it off? Are you going to together pay it off? That's That's something that you should probably mention.
You call Uncle Joe and you try
before-
to get some of that student loan debt relief money
Yeah,
going
so
for
let's
you.
talk about that because this is, a new money grab. Is this the way that President Biden is going to buy the election? He announced a $9 billion in student loan forgiveness for 125,000 borrowers. Here he is touting this new initiative.
This kind of relief is life-changing for individuals and their families. but it's good for our economy as a whole as well. By freeing millions of Americans from the crushing burden of student debt, it means they can go and get their lives in order. They can think about buying a house. They can start a business. They can be starting a family. This matters. It matters in their daily lives.
So, Jim Iuorio, how is this good for the economy?
Well, it's not good for the economy at a time when we're fighting inflation, and they've been doing this, the student loan forbearance, the eviction moratoriums, all those things over the last 3 years when we're fighting inflation is the exact same thing as pushing money into the economy. It's a counterbalance. It's creating worse inflation. There is zero data that suggests that the holders of these student loans are the most needy and have the highest propensity to consume if you wipe away their debt. It's asinine. But the worst part about this whole thing is that he talks about almost like there was this predatory lender. And guess what? There is a predatory lender. 12 years ago, maybe 13, the federal government took over all the student loans and took them away from banks, and then started pushing out this idea that your gender studies degree was every bit as important to society as your STEM degree. And all of these people borrowing $250,000 to go to some small private school to get a degree in Spanish. So it makes no sense. They're the predatory lender. If you look just behind the curtain even an inch, you realize that it's so schemy. And then to be able, every election cycle, to be able to dangle this in front of people and say, yeah, we're the people who might wipe out your student loan. But guess what? They're never going to wipe it out completely, because then they lose the political clout of saying they're going to before elections. But people, I guess this is what people vote for. It's very frustrating to me, obviously.
Well, who qualifies? I mean, they said 125,000 borrowers. Who are they?
This particular one, I believe, is like military, people been in public service, teachers, things like that. I think it is more slanted toward that. But again, that doesn't matter to me too. The Supreme Court has already said that that you cannot do this, and they don't care. When people believe this ideology, this religious fervor, they just completely ignore, established law. And this, again, back in the Obama administration, I've written, I don't know if you've written anything I've wrote about that. There's a multitude of things to point out. But when Chrysler went bankrupt, the Obama administration came in, the seniors, going too far in the weeds with this, but let's just say this. The 100 years of bankruptcy law said the assets belonged to one class, the hedge funds who had lent Chrysler money. The Obama administration came in and just took that money away and gave it to the unions. Someone like me might say, well, it's convenient that the unions voted for you and the hedge funds probably did not. But my point is that when they think, it's like the benevolent tyrant C.S. Lewis wrote about, is that they never sleep. And if they think they're doing good, everything else goes to the wind, including the law.
Hey, I'm told that you own a bar, Cugino, so let me ask you this.
Brant's in Palatine. It's a restaurant bar. It's awesome.
What is it, Brant's?
Brant's. You need to eat there. It's a great atmosphere.
I'm writing it down.
And it's wonderful food.
Yeah, I got to take the Bella Gina Marie there because I have an Italian princess and she'd love to meet you. How are the sales of Bud Light going at the bar? Is that still something that's really dragging?
Oh, yeah. It collapsed, and it never really got off the canvas. And the thing that amazes me the most about it is when people on the left were like, oh, they're this organized boycott of Bud Light. No, nobody ever said a word to each other. Just people would be like, who normal Bud Light people just say, I want a Coors Light. And that was it, and that was it. They never recovered. Ray, we've talked about this on the show before. The thing that amazes me about Anheuser-Busch, about Target, about Levi's even really, Disney, it doesn't seem like they care that they're doing damage to their brand. What was more important to them at the time was to curry favor to the woke mob and the government. And they made these decisions like, you and I are not marketing execs. We could have told Bud Light if they said we're going to do this, you would have said, nah, that's terrible.
I would have fallen on a landmine before I let that happen. I mean,
right.
So, but I mean, are you selling a case a day, a case a week, and not even that?
I bet it's less than half of what it was, and I don't know the exact numbers. It was, I think it was our big, Walt does most of the inventory stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it was our best-selling bottle. I don't do the real work.
I know. And you're not washing dishes in the back. We understand.
But it's interesting. It's interesting to see what's going on. All of a sudden, Target announces they're closing, 9 or 10 stores across the country.
In woke cities where
there's looting and everything else.
Burglary's out of control.
But, Target doesn't open a store where they know it's going to fail. They put so much research into it They know what works and what doesn't. And for Target to have done what they did with the swimwear and everything else, and for Bud Light to have done this.
For 1% of the population.
But the other thing is when that 1% turns against you, which they did, now you can't win no matter which way you go.
Right.
So good luck to you.
All right, Jim Iuorio, we're going to have to leave it there, and I'm hungry now. So if you want the best burger in town and the tacos, I love your tacos, go to Brant's and Palatine and listen to his Futures Edge podcast. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank, a bank where relationships still matter. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.